Now, ultimately, whatever explanation we give for the creation of the universe based on sources in the Torah itself, we can always come back to the ultimate question that God did not need this. Other sources, philosophical sources, speak about the idea of the world existing in potential, but in order for that potential to be realized, there needed to be the actual physical creation of the world. But indeed, other philosophers counter that in God's infinite nature, there is no difference between actual and potential. And this is why the author of the Tanya, Shneur Zaman Liadi, prefers the explanation of the Midrash that God had this desire, and he focuses on the word desire, which is not entirely a function of logic, and therefore he says in Yiddish, the word in Yiddish for desire is a ta'ava. A ta'ava is kasha. We can't actually ask a question. Any fully logical reason for something existing implies that if it didn't exist, then this logic would not be satisfied. This would imply some kind of lacking in God. And this is something we can't accept philosophically and theologically. And therefore, he says, well, whatever we say, we are coming down to the fact this was a desire that God had. In this instance, the desire was that on the one hand, a world far lower material, coarse, and actually even a world which conceals godliness to the extent that even evil can exist here, the sense of ego, the world has its own illusion of being autonomous. And in this world, to make it inhabitable by the divine presence. And that is the idea of a dirah, a home. A home is where someone is comfortable. And when we say we want to make a dirah from the world, or dirah for Hashem's presence, it means a place which is conducive so that divine presence can dwell here. And this is exemplified by the building of the Mishkan, the mitzvah of which we have in Parshah Terumah. Now, you will not find in the name of in the Parsha any hint to the idea of the Mishkan, because the name is Terumah. Terumah means a donation or to raise up, and that is because the very first stage of making the Mishkan, of making the tabernacle, was getting the materials, and this was a function of voluntary gifts from the children of Israel. And this was the first step. And indeed, it begins with a very curious grammatical formulation as well. It says, speak to the children of Israel, ve'yikechu li Terumah, and they should take for me Terumah. And in the commentaries, there's considerable commotion about this word ve'yikechu li. Ve'yikechu, they should take. They're not taking Terumah. Terumah is a donation. You give a donation. And on the simple level, there are a variety of explanations, including Rashi's, that it implies a separation from their own possessions and then devoting that in the second stage to the building of the Mishkan. But there is a very, very different and beautiful direction focusing on this idea that something is only taken when we give it away. Whatever we don't give, we haven't possessed yet, and the possession is expressed and manifested by the giving. There's a wonderful story told about a finance minister during the Spanish Golden Age, a Jewish finance minister, and there were those that did not like him and told the king, you will see that he's not honest with you. Ask him how much money does he have. The king did this and received an answer shortly thereafter, which seemed to be a total underestimation, and he felt that this enemy of this Jewish minister was right. He lied to me, and he confronted the Jewish minister. The Jewish minister said, I told you how much I gave to charity. This is the only thing that I own. All of my possessions, my ships can sink, my homes can burn down, my property can be stolen. What I gave away, nobody can ever take from me. And the Khatam Sofer explains this concept. I want to connect it back to the idea of elevating the material, although these various interpretations of the word terumah have made this parsha also kind of a prototype of tzedakah. It's like the charity parsha, but actually the two are intimately connected, as we shall now see, because the ownership of the universe comes through giving, but also through using it properly. And since the proper use of our material surroundings is in serving God and using them for fulfillment of commandments, So hence, we gain ownership by this correct stewardship, which is in fact about using it in the correct way and realizing where it comes from. So the Khatam Sofer has a very interesting comment on this. And he says from the Talmud that it says, whoever gets benefit from anything in the physical world without making first a blessing, which is made on food before we eat, it's as if he absconded consecrated property. And he proves this. He says, "L'Hashem ha'aretz hamlaya," to the Lord is the earth and all of its fullness. Everything belongs to God. You can't take it. So an opposing point of view says, yes, but there seems to be a contradiction. It does say, "L'Hashem ha'aretz hamlaya," that to the Lord is the earth and all of its fullness, but it also there's another verse that says something slightly different. It says, "Shemaim shemaim l'Hashem," the heavens belong to God, and the land was given over to human beings. So it seems like there's a bit of division of property here, a division of joint property. God gets heaven, we get earth. Why do we say that the earth also belongs to God? What does this mean? So the Talmud resolves this difficulty and says that the statement that the earth also belongs to God and not to man refers to the stage before we make the blessing, whereas the idea that the heavens belong to God and the earth belongs to man, this refers to after we make the blessing, because when we make the blessing, we are then given the thing that we are blessing. Now, what are we saying when we say a blessing? We're saying, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, who created everything, who created fruit of the vine, who created fruit of the tree, who created vegetables from the earth." We're acknowledging, in fact, God's sovereignty over all the universe. So what happens is almost a paradoxical process in which our acknowledgement that everything is truly from God means that God can then entrust it to us. And so it's almost a self-referential, oxymoronic process in which we are owning by acknowledging that it is not ours. Whereas if we pretend that it is ours, the egotistic approach, we in a sense, we miss the boat, and then we say it never becomes ours, and we lose this aspect of ownership. So this is another idea. And this idea can be taken one step further, that even not in terms of giving, but this recognition of God's sovereignty means that what we see everything around us in the universe, so our recognition that is not there purely for our own selfish benefit, but rather for a mission to carry out, which is to transform it and to elevate it. That is the moment of ownership. That is the yichud. That is when we take. At that point, it becomes ours.